All right, what's going on, y'all? So it's been hard sitting on. I went to San Francisco State and I studied ancient African history as a minor, and I end up after I walked away and didn't graduate. I end up going back to my old coursework and I took the books and articles and data that I reread it. But I noticed it was something different when I reread it. When I reread it, the books and articles and stuff that I learned from San Francisco State about Africana studies, I noticed that when I was able to read at my own pace, because when we're in school, we're taught to read fast and it's almost impossible to comprehend. I had a class where met 3 times a week, and there would be almost 300 pages of reading in between every class meet. So I read all of this stuff, but I felt like, like I'm reading it, but I'm not even getting a chance to, it's not even getting an opportunity to be shifted into my long-term memory. It's a process to take information from short-term to long-term memory facilities. And everybody has a unique process to do this. So with me, I felt like I wasn't going to be able to retain anything. So for each class that I took that was a semester, it would take almost a year and a half to just get through half of the material at my pace in a way that I can re-articulate it, understand it in a meaningful way. Then when I started rereading the story, I started noticing that when we're talking about pharaohs in Egypt, it's overlapping African history to the point to where there's actual people that are documented in African history that are in the Bible, so we got Akhenaten. Akhenaten is one of the most important figures in African history because to me it's the most important bridge between Christianity and ancient African beliefs, because Christianity is just a form of beliefs that existed already. And there's specific reasons I want to say that, like, we used to be polytheistic, meaning that we used to believe in multiple gods, many gods. But there was a reason for that I think people don't understand. It wasn't that, like, there was just like a multitude of gods. It was just that it was like almost regional. So every region had a different like name or figure of the god, but it was the same principles. And then it would be like a god of light, god of water. But that's because there was an understanding that there's an omnipresence. There's a different understanding of the world, like this idea of being one. Like there's an idea that people understood that energy, consciousness is just an individual representation of a collective consciousness. Like we all belong to the same energy field. So them multiple gods, you couldn't separate the idea of having multiple gods to that everything still has a purpose and that there's still an order. There's an order. So no god is more powerful than the other. Each god had like something that they had to offer. So monotheism and polytheism. Now, what happened? There was a reason why the world went from polytheism, multiple gods, to a monotheism, one god. The reason they did that is because there was something called the high priest. The high priest, or the priest of Amen, or as you may know it, Amen, Ra, spelled Amenra. The priests of Amen Ra were the Congress. The pharaoh was the figurehead, but the high priest, the priests of Amen Ra, actually were the ones who controlled the city and government. So that's where this representative government, he was the figure, but they were the power. So if something went wrong, they could be mad at the pharaoh while the high priests were in control. And this wasn't a democracy. So, the high priest corrupted the spiritual system. The spiritual system was real. It's just it got convoluted, and they just kept introducing new gods and kept presenting new sacrifices. See, because what you got to understand is there was no tax back in the day. There was no tax. and there was no private property. So everybody essentially had to uh, pay a tithe. Tithe in those times were essentially taxes. So you tithe 10% of what you produce, because there was no such thing as private property back then. Tithing, that was taxes during the time. Then when they switched to the monetary system, they abandoned or they tried to move from tithing to taxing. So that's the overlap. That's a part of history that people don't understand. And then one of the Black history is the Bible, because you got to understand that Black people ruled the world for hundreds of thousands of years, and of those hundreds of thousands of years, primarily Black women, um, um, monarchies ruled the world, the majority of the world. Patriarchy is actually relatively new. The patriarchy is new. The matriarch, I said monarchy. The matriarch has existed way longer than the patriarch. That's the funny thing about fighting for equality. Like, men have only ruled the world in the last 1,000 years. Prior to that, prior to Egypt, it was mainly women who ruled the world and dominated. I don't know if you heard of Queen Sheba, but that's Queen Sheba, King David, and that's where the Menelik dynasty comes from. It's stuff that's in the Bible, like